Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled people's story. My wife and I bought our modest ranch-style home about 5 years ago in a quiet neighborhood just outside of Phoenix. It's not fancy, but it's ours, and we've put a lot of work into making it comfortable and efficient. Arizona gets stupid hot in the summer, as you can imagine, and our electricity bills were absolutely killing us. We're talking $500 a month just to keep the house at a barely tolerable 78 degrees. After doing some research, I decided solar was the way to go. It's a big investment up front, but the long-term savings are substantial, especially in a place that gets sunshine about 300 days a year. We saved for nearly 3 years to afford a decent system. I did tons of research, got multiple quotes, and finally settled on a local company with great reviews. The installation took a few days, and when they were done, we had a beautiful array of 20 panels on our roof. The system cost us just over $24,000, but with tax credits and the projected energy savings, it would pay for itself in about 7-8 years. Our first electric bill after the installation was like Christmas morning, down from $450 to just $28 for the connection fee. I was ecstatic, showing everyone who would listen, and probably some who didn't want to, how much we were saving. My wife even joked that I loved those solar panels more than her. Not true, of course, but they were definitely high on my list of prized possessions. The new neighbor, about 6 months after our solar installation, the house next door sold. It had been vacant for a while, so we were initially happy to have new neighbors. That happiness didn't last long. The new owner was a woman in her mid-40s who immediately started extensive renovations on the property. She tore down the modest house that matched the rest of the neighborhood and began building what I can only describe as a McMansion. 3 stories, massive footprint, tons of windows, the works. At first, I tried to be friendly. When I saw her out front one day, I walked over to introduce myself. "Hi there, I'm your neighbor from next door. Just wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood." She looked me up and down, clearly unimpressed with my weekend attire of shorts and a faded t-shirt. "Thanks," she said flatly. "I'm Karen." No handshake offered. "Nice to meet you, Karen. If you need any recommendations for local services or anything, let me know. We've been here about 5 years now." She glanced at my house with a slight grimace. "I doubt we'd use the same services, but thanks anyway. Pleasant, right?" But I tried not to judge too harshly. Moving is stressful, and maybe she was just having a bad day. Over the next few months, we had several run-ins with Karen. She complained about our lawnmower being too loud at 2 p.m. on a Saturday, called the city to report our trash cans being visible from the street. They weren't, and even had the audacity to ask us to park our cars in the garage because they were eyesores that lowered the tone of the neighborhood. One day, Karen came over while I was washing my car in the driveway. She was wearing designer workout clothes and had that look on her face that suggested I was about to hear more complaints. "Your solar panels are really ugly," she said without preamble. I was taken aback. "Excuse me? Those panels on your roof, they're an eyesore. Have you considered removing them? They're bringing down property values." I couldn't help but laugh. "No, I haven't considered removing my $24,000 investment that's saving me hundreds of dollars a month just because you think they're ugly." Her face hardened. "Well, maybe you should. This is becoming a premium neighborhood, and certain standards should be maintained." "Sorry, but they're staying," I said firmly. "And for the record, solar panels actually increase property values. Did you know that?" She just rolled her eyes and walked away, muttering something about stubborn people and no consideration for others. The Disappearance. About a month after that conversation, I woke up early one Sunday to take care of some yard work before the day got too hot. As I was filling my coffee mug, I glanced out the kitchen window and noticed something odd about my roof. Something was different, but in my pre-caffeine haze, I couldn't immediately place what it was. Then it hit me. My solar panels were gone, all of them. I ran outside in my pajamas thinking maybe I was seeing things. Nope. The roof was completely bare, with only some mounting hardware and wiring left behind. 20 solar panels gone without a trace. I immediately called the police to report the theft. The responding officer seemed skeptical. "So you're telling me someone stole 20 solar panels off your roof overnight and neither you nor your wife heard anything?" "That's exactly what I'm saying," I replied, trying to stay calm. "We sleep with a white noise machine and the bedroom is on the other side of the house." He took some photos and notes but didn't seem particularly motivated to solve the great solar heist. He mentioned that solar panel theft was becoming more common, but usually targeted vacant properties or commercial installations, not residential homes in quiet neighborhoods. After the officer left, I called my insurance company to start the claim process. The agent I spoke with was more sympathetic, but warned me that the claim might be complicated since solar panels fall into a gray area between home improvements and personal property. Then I called the solar company, hoping they might have some insight or maybe even a tracking system I wasn't aware of. The customer service rep was shocked to hear about residential panels being stolen and promised to send a technician out to assess the damage to the mounting system and wiring. My wife was devastated when she woke up and heard the news. Those panels represented years of saving and planning, and now they were gone. Sure, insurance might cover some of it, but we'd still be on the hook for the deductible, and our rates would almost certainly go up. The discovery. The following day, I decided to walk around the neighborhood to see if anyone had noticed anything suspicious. As I was passing Karen's McMansion, I happened to glance up at her massive roof and stopped dead in my tracks. There, gleaming in the Arizona sun, were solar panels. Lots of them. They looked suspiciously like my solar panels. I couldn't believe it. Surely even Karen wouldn't be brazen enough to steal my solar panels and install them on her own roof? That would be insane. But the timing was too coincidental, and something in my gut told me those were indeed my missing panels. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures, making sure to get clear shots of the panels from multiple angles. Then I went home and dug out the documentation from my solar installation, which included serial numbers and detailed specs of the panels. Armed with this information, I called the police again and asked to speak to a detective. This time, I was taken more seriously. Detective Rodriguez agreed to meet me at my house that afternoon. When he arrived, I showed him my documentation and the photos I'd taken of Karen's roof. "I know this sounds crazy," I said, "but I'm pretty sure my neighbor stole my solar panels and installed them on her own roof." Detective Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. "That would be, unusual. Solar panels aren't exactly easy to remove and reinstall. It would take professional knowledge and equipment." "I know, but look at these photos. Those panels look identical to mine, and they weren't there before mine disappeared." He studied the pictures. "I see what you mean, but we can't just accuse someone of theft without evidence. Do you have security cameras?" My heart sank. "No, we've been meaning to install them but haven't gotten around to it." "What about neighbors? Did anyone see or hear anything unusual that night?" I shook my head. "I've asked around, but no one's mentioned anything." Detective Rodriguez sighed. "I'll look into it, but without direct evidence linking your neighbor to the theft, there's not much we can do right now." I was frustrated but understood his position. "So what now?" "I'll contact the solar companies in the area to see if anyone installed panels on your neighbor's house recently. If they did, we can check if the serial numbers match yours." It wasn't much, but it was something. As Detective Rodriguez was leaving, he paused at the door. "One more thing, don't confront your neighbor about this. If she is responsible, we don't want to tip her off that we're investigating." The investigation. Over the next week, I tried to keep my cool whenever I saw Karen outside. It wasn't easy, especially when I noticed her smugly showing off her new solar installation to visitors. I wanted to march over there and call her out, but I knew that would only make things worse. Meanwhile, Detective Rodriguez was making progress. He called to tell me he'd tracked down a small, somewhat shady installation company that had recently put up solar panels on Karen's house. The owner was being uncooperative, claiming client confidentiality, so Rodriguez was working on getting a warrant to access their records. While waiting for the legal process to unfold, I decided to take matters into my own hands, at least in terms of gathering evidence. I invested in a high-quality security camera system and installed cameras covering every angle of our property. If Karen or anyone else tried anything else, we'd have it on video. I also reached out to my neighbors directly behind Karen's house. They had a perfect view of her roof from their second-story windows. When I casually mentioned that I was curious about when exactly Karen's solar panels had been installed, they were happy to help. "Oh, that was definitely last Sunday morning," said Frank, the husband. "I remember because they woke us up at about 5 a.m. with all their noise. My wife was furious." "Do you remember what company it was?" I asked, trying to sound merely curious. "That's the weird thing," he replied. "There was no company name on the truck, just a plain white van. I thought it was strange at the time. That was the confirmation I needed. I thanked Frank and immediately called Detective Rodriguez with this new information. A few days later, Rodriguez called me with news. We've got the warrant and accessed the company's records. The solar panels installed on your neighbor's house match the serial numbers of your stolen panels. We're moving forward with the case. I felt a wave of vindication wash over me. So what happens now? We'll be arresting the installers first. They claim they had no idea the panels were stolen, that your neighbor told them she was having them moved from another property she owned. Once we've got their full statements, we'll be paying your neighbor a visit. Chuck continued the confrontation. 2 days later, Detective Rodriguez called again. We're heading to your neighbor's house in about an hour to execute a search warrant and potentially make an arrest. I thought you might want to know. I definitely wanted to know. In fact, I wanted front row seats to this show. I thanked him for the heads up and casually made my way to the front yard to do some gardening right around the time the police were due to arrive. Sure enough, precisely on schedule, 2 police cruisers and an unmarked car pulled up in front of Karen's house. Detective Rodriguez and 3 officers approached her front door, while another officer stayed by the vehicles. From my vantage point, I couldn't hear what was being said, but I could see Karen's face go from annoyed to shocked to outraged as Detective Rodriguez presumably explained why they were there. She gestured wildly, pointed in my direction once or twice, and seemed to be denying everything. After about 10 minutes of doorstep debate, the officers entered Karen's house. I continued my very important plant watering activities, making sure to stay within view in case anything interesting happened. About 20 minutes later, Karen emerged from the house in handcuffs, looking absolutely furious. As they led her to one of the cruisers, she spotted me watching and lunged in my direction. "You!" she screamed, causing the officers to tighten their grip on her arms. "This is all your fault! Those panels were going to waste on your ugly little house. My home deserves them. You'll regret this." I just waved pleasantly as they put her in the back of the police car. Detective Rodriguez walked over to me afterward. "Well, that was, dramatic," he said with a slight smile. "Is it true? Did she really steal them?" I asked, even though the answer was obvious. He nodded. "She's not exactly denying it anymore. According to her, she deserved those panels more than you did because her house is bigger and more valuable. She claimed she was doing the neighborhood a favor by moving them to a more appropriate property." I shook my head in disbelief. "That's insane. What kind of person thinks like that?" "You'd be surprised," Rodriguez sighed. "Anyway, we've got her on grand theft, receiving stolen property, and conspiracy charges. The installers are also being charged as accessories. We'll need you to come down to the station later to provide a formal statement." "What about my panels? When can I get them back?" "That's the tricky part," he replied. "They've been installed on her roof now, so removing them could cause damage to both the panels and her property. The DA will likely include restitution in any plea deal or sentencing, but physically getting your exact panels back might be complicated." The legal battle. Karen was released on bail the next day, and she was not happy. She immediately hired a high-priced attorney who tried to spin the situation as a misunderstanding and offered a settlement. Karen would pay for new panels for my house, and she would keep the ones currently installed on her roof. My insurance company had assigned me a lawyer, Josh, who advised against accepting this offer. "She committed a felony," Josh explained during our meeting. "Her offer essentially lets her keep the stolen property if she buys you replacements. That's not how the law works. Plus, there's the matter of the increased electricity costs you've incurred since the theft." "So, what do you recommend?" I asked. "We counter with our own offer. She pays for new panels for your house, plus all the utility costs you've incurred, plus damages for the inconvenience and stress, and we still pursue criminal charges." "Can we do that? Push for both civil compensation and criminal charges?" "Absolutely," Josh confirmed. "The criminal case is the state versus Karen, but we can pursue civil damages separately, and given the evidence, both cases are strong. Karen's attorney rejected our counteroffer, calling it vindictive and excessive. They insisted on their original proposal and threatened to make things difficult if we didn't accept." Josh just laughed when I told him about the threat. Make things difficult? More difficult than stealing 20 solar panels in broad daylight? I'd love to see them try. The criminal case proceeded, with Karen eventually pleading guilty to lesser charges of receiving stolen property and conspiracy in exchange for the grand theft charge being dropped. She was sentenced to 2 years of probation, 200 hours of community service, and ordered to pay restitution for the full value of the solar panels plus installation costs. But that wasn't the end of it. We still pursued our civil case, seeking additional damages for the increased utility costs, the time I had to take off work to deal with the situation, and punitive damages for the sheer audacity of her actions. The sweet, sweet victory. The civil case never made it to trial. After a particularly damning deposition where Karen admitted she'd planned the theft after seeing how much money I was saving on electricity, her attorney finally convinced her to settle. The terms were everything we asked for and more. 1. Full replacement cost for a new solar system, better than my original one, on my house too. All utility costs I'd paid since the theft, plus an additional 50% to account for future increases. 3. Compensation for my time and stress. 4. $10,000 in punitive damages. 5. A formal written apology. 6. And the cherry on top, she had to pay for the installation of my comprehensive security system. All told, Karen ended up paying nearly twice the value of the original solar panels. The settlement specifically stated that she was not allowed to keep the stolen panels on her roof. They had to be professionally removed and donated to a local school that was implementing a renewable energy program. When the new solar system was installed on my house, with additional security features this time, I made sure to be outside monitoring the work when Karen arrived home. The look on her face when she saw the new, larger array on my roof was priceless. She stopped her car in the middle of the street, got out, and just stood there staring with her mouth open. When she noticed me watching her, she quickly got back in her car and sped into her driveway, nearly hitting her garage door in the process. The next day, the crew arrived to remove the stolen panels from her roof. I wasn't petty enough to watch that process. Okay, maybe I was, but I had to work that day. My wife reported that Karen stayed inside the entire time, with her curtains firmly closed. The aftermath. It's been about 6 months since this all went down. Karen hasn't spoken a word to us since her arrest, which is honestly a blessing. There are rumors in the neighborhood that she's trying to sell her McMansion, but with the housing market cooling and her reputation tarnished, she hasn't had any takers yet. My new solar system is working beautifully, saving us even more money than the original one. The security system has been a great investment too. Not that we've had any more theft issues, but it's nice to have the peace of mind. The funniest part of all this? Several other neighbors have now installed solar panels of their own after seeing how much drama Karen went through to steal mine. They figured they must be worth it. The solar company even gave me a referral bonus for all the new business I inadvertently sent their way. Sometimes I look at the security camera footage of Karen being led away in handcuffs, just to remind myself that justice does occasionally prevail. It cost me some time, stress, and temporary financial strain, but in the end, Karen's entitlement cost her so much more. Money, reputation, and criminal record. As for me, I'm just enjoying my nearly free electricity and the satisfaction of knowing that crime doesn't pay, but sometimes revenge sure does. Edit. Wow, this blew up overnight. Thanks for all the awards and comments, everyone. To answer some common questions, 1. Yes, this is all 100% true, though I've changed some minor details for privacy. 2. No, I don't feel bad about pursuing both criminal and civil cases. She stole from me. 3. For those asking about the installation company, they were fined and put on probation, but kept their business license after agreeing to implement stricter verification procedures. 4. Karen is still on probation, and yes, she still lives next door. For now. 5. And to the person who asked if I'd share the security cam footage, sorry, my lawyer advised against posting it online while she's still on probation. The next one is a pro-revenge story, circa 2020, January. My friend makes a stupid decision and buys a brand new car he can't afford. His insurance is like $400 a month. He makes like $10.25 an hour working as a shift supervisor at McDonald's. His car payment is like $795 a month. Now at $10.25 an hour, 30 hours a week, that's a weekly income of about $300 a week or about $1,230 a month. So yeah. So my friend came to me for help because I used to sell cars and know the industry pretty well. I go over his paperwork. The dealer did rip him off, but my friend is trying to find a way to get out of this mess. And ripping someone off isn't illegal. They did, of course, overcharge him for warranty. They gave him a higher APR. They had add-ons, etc. But none of that is illegal, and I know the only way I can get my friend out of this deal is if they did something illegal. So I look at his finance application that my friend signed. It correctly listed his income, which turned a light bulb on in my head. No bank is going to approve someone for a $795 car payment if they are only making $1,200 a month. It does not make mathematical sense to do that. So I start searching through his paperwork for the finance app the dealer submitted to the bank. Oftentimes when you submit a finance application at a dealership, the dealership will take the hand-filled out application and reproduce it electronically. This is pretty normal. normal. However, on the application the dealer submitted to the bank, the dealer said my friend was a GM of the McDonald's and made $70,000. My friend had good credit, so it doesn't appear like the bank asked for proof of income. So I go to the dealership with my friend and tell the sales manager he's going to want to put me in touch with the GM because we are going to be unwinding my friend's deal and giving his trade-in back. The sales manager thought I was joking. The GM also thought I was joking. Then I demonstrated how his dealership finance department committed bank fraud. I showed the GM the finance app my friend filled out. I then showed the GM the finance app his dealership submitted to the bank and pointed at the income difference. My friend really made $14,000 a year. The dealership claimed my friend made $7,000 a year. That's bank fraud. That's a felony. Let's keep this simple, shall we? The GM sees his dealership is in a load of shit. The proof I am presenting to him is rock solid. He knows it, I know it, we are all on the same page. He goes, okay, so what can I do to make this right? I go, unwind the deal, give me my friend his trade-in back. Unwinding the deal is basically the GM agreeing to cancel the deal and basically erasing the deal and pretending it never happened. GM tries to avoid that, but I remain firm and remind him we can easily take this documentation and turn his life in a living hell. He knows I'm right. My friend also needs a car to get to work the next day. The GM says he'll check into it. He comes back and tells me unfortunately they sold his trade-in already. I said, that's fine, unwind the deal, and let's put my friend into something as good or slightly better than what he traded in for. So the GM goes, so he'll buy a car similar to his trade-in? I said, no, you'll give him a car similar to his trade-in. The GM goes, it doesn't work that way. I go, it does when you commit bank fraud. GM is upset with me and I remind him, I'm being really nice and this situation can totally get really ugly. Like felony level charges ugly, like losing your franchise ugly. So yeah, this is going hurt, but it's going hurt less my way. So the GM goes all right and he looks in his inventory and he tells me they have a 2007 Focus with 10K more miles. I tell him, no, the car you give my friend needs to be the same or better than what he trade in. The GM counters, I'm giving him a free car. And I go, no, you took his trade-in, you sold it, you made money on that sale. You also committed a felony in the process of selling him his new car. You are now correcting that mistake. This isn't a free car for my friend. This is a you are correcting your mistake. GM insists that's what he's willing to do. I tell him if he can't do better, then that we will go to a consumer protection attorney and have a conversation with them. My friend didn't want to go this route, but it was our plan B. We get up. The GM says, wait, give me a second. The GM goes, I have a 08 Civic. It has 5,000 more miles, but it's a Civic and not a Focus. I unwind the deal on the new car and put your friend in the Civic at no extra cost. We agree GM has the paper drawn up. The old loan on the new car is canceled. They take in the new car again, but because it's already titled, they'll have to sell it as used. That sucks for them. And they gave my friend a better car than the one he traded in. For people asking why we didn't get a lawyer involved from the start, we could have done that, but courts take a long time, and this was a faster way to fix the situation. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.